Okay, so now we're recording. And yes, this is our fourth shiur in Hilchos Taruvos. And today on the schedule is to finish Siman Tzadik Tes. It's 3 Sifim, Hey Vav Zayin, but it's very, very vitally important and very applicable set of halachas in daily life. So you can see on the bottom over there, the Inyan of Bittul Isur Lechatchila, that if you have something which is prohibited, are you allowed to nullify it? So we learned up until now the basic principles. We're not finished yet. We're going to have some more basic principles today. But in Siman Tzadik Ches and Tzadik Tes, we have all the general conditions, Mivamina, B'Mishaina, and so on. Kuf Hey is going to be very important in terms of what kind of bishul and klisheni and malicha and so on, in terms of things that got mixed in, a taruvos of prohibited item that got mixed in. The next 3 simonim, Kuf Aleph and Kuf Beis, are exceptions to the rule, things that are never bottle, not bottle at all. There's no shishim or tam or anything. There's not the reiv. There's the filabelafle bottle. So today we're going to be finishing this this section here about Mevatel Isur Lechatchila. So I think we'll start and then we'll discuss a little bit later on when we have more of the participants on over here. And this is supposed to be in presentation mode, right? So we try that. Okay, good. Right, I'm going to move myself into a corner. Ein Mevatel Isur Lechatchila. You're not allowed to nullify something prohibited on purpose. So if you have something prohibited and it's a little drop, and let's say it's not even a strong taste, that it's going to be nirgash, like a strong flavor or something of that sort, and it's less than a shishim, so it's going to be bottle. So if you put it in, then you can't detect the taste. Let's say it's min b'sheina mina, it's less than shishim, there's no tam, so the food would be 100% good. But we have a prohibition called ein Mevatel Isur Lechatchila, but you're not allowed to do that action of nullifying it. And where it is, we get this from is old discussion you have at the beginning of Masech Beya, and Daf Gimel there, you have a discussion of it, and we're going to be quoting that soon. But the that's going to be the bulk of today's shiur, although we'll have another of other important inyanim as well. Now there, Bachal is the whole machlekes that if a person does this prohibition is it minatera or midrabban? The Rabbi hold it's an issa minatera, it's an issa d'oraisa to do this. The Rav Paskim hold it's an issa d'rabbanan to do it. And then we have the difference between what's lechatchila and what's b'diavad. You know, if you're not allowed to do a lechatchila, but then b'diavad, do we give a knas? So certainly you're not allowed to do a lechatchila, but b'diavad, if it was already done, is there a penalty, a knas, that we prohibit the person from eating or getting benefit from the food? So that's another story, and that we're going to have a whole discussion on both in Sif Hey and Vav. So today we're learning Hey Vav and Zayin. Hey and Vav are both about this inyan of being Mevatel Isur Lechatchila, and deals with some other important issues a bittul as well. And Sif Zayin is a separate inyan. We'll do it at the end directly. It is related to this, but it's not as applicable. And then we're going to have a certain, as I mentioned here, some other klalim regarding bittul to round out the picture, so to speak, peripherally related to our subject of being Mevatel Isur Lechatchila. Okay, there's it's very interesting. Rabbi Kiva Eger wonders, there's a prohibition Mevatel Isur Lechatchila, so why can't you put a drop of milk in a pot of meat? Because if you remember, we had a similar svara, it's way back when in some Zayin, about, although normally we're machmer, where the whole thing becomes prohibited, for example, we say it's even more strict than other prohibitions. But on the other hand, you're not allowed to nullify Isser. If you put a drop of milk in the big pot of meat, let's get clear. The halacha is you're not allowed to do it because they but he wonders why is it that this din should apply? Because if the milk is heter, the milk is mutter, and the mixture is also mutter because it can be batal b'shishim. So where's this isser over here in general? But lahalacha we hold that it is aser. All shayla whether it's an isser deraisa, an isser derabban, and we'll talk later on what if it's suffix isser. What is the status in such a case? The different the klalim bittul we're going to be learning today about the din of chayz v'neir. Very, very important and applicable din. What if something you had, for example, 60 ounces of heter, then it falls in. You have some kosher soup, and it falls in an ounce of chalif. So now you have bittul b'shishim. So the whole soup is kosher because it's nullified in shishim. Now you have how much kosher soup? You have 61 ounces of kosher soup. Now let's say it falls in another ounce of chalif. So if it would be another ounce of chazer or something like that, as a different time, we learn not only it doesn't become asa, so we learned earlier that the chazer will be mavatal chalif, the chalif will be mavatal chazer, because you have no taste of chazer there because it's less than shishim. You have no taste of chalif there; it's also under shishim. So each one joins together to be mavatal the other one. But let's say the second ounce was chalif, so the first ounce was chalif. So now you have 61 ounces of kosher soup, but 1 ounce of it is chalif. And then a second ounce of chalif falls in. Now we got 62 ounces, but now it's 2 out of 60. It's more to shishim. So that's in of chayz v'neir, that it wakes up and you thought I was bottled, yeah? But I met my old friend Chalev over here, and the two of them joined together. It wakes up under what conditions does that apply and what not? We're speaking about today. And also we have inyan of heter beheter. Spoke about bas b'chalav. Is there such inyan of bittul when we're talking about something which b'chal is mutter? So let's get to the task at hand. So Sif Hey is going to speak about the isser that fell in is a isser d'oraisa. Sif Vav is going to talk about when it's an isser d'rabbanan. So it's basically the same theme. It's a continuation, goes together, Sif Hey and Sif Vav. But Sif Hey is talking about someone with mavatal lechatchila, something which is an isser d'oraisa. See, we have the flying chicken wing over here, which is black. It looks like it's nevela. It's supposed to be nevela with a pot of kosher chicken wings. And that's an isser d'oraisa. Sif Vav is going to be about it's an isser d'rabbanan. And Sif Zayin is going to be talking about kli shafa, when you have a little tiny bit of isser that was absorbed in a keli. And it's always going to be bottle, because it's such a tiny amount. Let's say if one little drop spritzed into the keli. So then if you normally use it in the pot, there's always going to be bottle b'shishim. Do we have to worry about bittul malchatchil in such a case? Okay, so that's the general overview that Hazer, the Isser Minatato is becoming in this battle. The Sif Vav is an Isser d'Rabbanan became this battle. And Sif Zayin is they have a very small absorption in a keli becoming this battle. And do we have a Isser of Mavatal L'Chatchil? Okay, so here we have Shishim, more than Shishim times this chicken wing over here. Are you allowed to put it inside? And then it'll be batal b'shishim. You're not allowed. That's the prohibition of b'mavatal l'chatchil. Also, a lot of isrim heter l'vatli. You cannot mix together on purpose. You cannot mix together the prohibited thing with the permitted in order for it to be batal. So notice there's two pots over here. That's because there are two tziyurim. There's more, but there are two general descriptions of bittul l'chatchil discussed in these two sifim and machaber. On the right-hand side, it's going to be one possibility that a person can be mevatel l'chatchil, and the left-hand side is another one. So over here, there was shishim in the pot, and the person put it inside. They put the isser inside the pot. Mevatel isser l'chatchil, and that's exactly what they did. Mevatel the isser. Here it falls in, and now the whole thing there's more than shishim. But over here on the left, you notice this gray matter over here. This gray line over here is evidently the soup. So over here was a full pot of soup, and you had shishim. Over here, you don't have shishim. So it fell in, there's no shishim. So what are you going to do? So what they want to do is add on heter. So right now there's no shishim. So what's the bittul is? They're going to throw more inside, and now it'll be batal b'shishim. That's also mevatel ish l'chatchila. You're not putting in a prohibited thing; you're putting in a permitted thing. So if it was already mixed inside and there was no shishim, also laharb is heter levatli. You're not allowed to add more heter and be mevatel. Both of these are descriptions of being mevatel ish l'chatchila. So these are the two cases which are being discussed in the Machaber. In Siv Hey, where it's talking about an Isser Minatated, it's both the same thing. But in Siv Vav, and it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, the Machaber differentiates between the two. And he wants to say that the right-hand case, where you threw in the Isser, so that is the real case of Mavat L'Sartila. By Isser D'Rabbanan, the left-hand case, we don't have to worry about it. The Ramah is going to disagree. That's why we need this description. Later on, we'll have some other possible ways there could be an inyan of being Mavatul Isser L'Chatchila. So far, so good? Yeah, everybody there?
Yeah. Just by the way, the case on the right where you're putting in something of Isser, technically that would also be a problem because of what we learned about if you're adding something for flavor or whatever it is, it's a davar chashuv, however we there's a reason for it being there. It will be also because of that as well.
That's if it's part of the recipe. Over here, it's not part of the recipe. The person saw a piece of chicken lying around. They threw it inside. He didn't know it was nevela. He didn't know that's why it was on the side. It was nevela. Okay, whether he knew or he didn't know, it's still going to be a discussion. But the time that you put it in, see, if it's avidul taima, that it's made in specific, you're going to feel it's going to be nirgash the taste, and it's going to be mashpi on the taste. So that we discussed before about if the tam is nirgash by itself, or it just adds to the general taste. Over here, it's not adding anything to the taste. Before it was chicken soup, after it's chicken soup, it's just there's another piece of chicken there.
Okay.
There's another inyan of if it's a recipe, darachas yosef bakach. We mentioned the Rashba,
right?
That brings down. And we're going to speak about this a little bit later on today, as well. Now, just by the way, because the Ramah is going to jump right in over here. You have anything to say about that case on the left? Piece of nevela fell in, it was less than shishim. You see any other problem that we didn't talk about? Here we're saying you're going to add on, and now it's going to be batal b'shishim. Yeah, you see any problem with that?
The Rabbanan is bottle berov midaraisa.
That's min b'mini, but we have over here soup too. That's min b'sheina meaning.
Chatichanas nevela.
Chatichanas nevela, yeah. So according to Machaber, if you remember back in Simon Tzadik base, which we're going to get a little chazara of the din of chatichanas nevela soon. I'm just going to mention it now because it's going to come up in the Ramah. But if you remember back over there in Simon Tzadik base in Basel B'cholov, that the Machaber held the idea of Chatich and Nasa Nevela only applies if it's Basel B'cholov. And the Ramah holds also in general, a couple exceptions, but the Ramah general holds Bishari Surim. He also holds his Chatich and Nasa Nevela. So according to the Ramah, right over here, when this piece of Nevela fell inside and there was no Shishim, okay, let's say for argument's sake, there was 30 ounces of I don't know, let's say there's 10 pieces of chicken there. And there's another 10 ounces of chicken and 20 ounces of soup. There's 30 ounces over there, okay? So according to this, if we're just looking at at nullifying that piece of chicken, the non-kosher chicken, and it's 1 ounce of chicken, so then how much do we need to be mevatel it? So we already have 30. What do we need? Another 30. According to the Machaber, there's no Chatich Nasa Nevela, so you have to nullify. You're not allowed to do it, okay? It's Mavatel Isla Chatchila, but is it in the end? Would it? If not for that, would it be bottle or not? So since the Machaber, he holds the only time you say Chatich Nasa Nevela is with Basel B'cholov. He doesn't say with Shari Surim. This is a piece of Nevela. There's no Chatich Nasa Nevela here. So how much Isser is there? 1 ounce. But according to the Ramah, he holds his Chatich Nasa Nevela b'Shari Surim. So if 1 ounce of non-kosher chicken falls into 30 ounces of kosher, So according to Chetich Hanas and Nevela, how much non-kosher do we have now? How many ounces?
31.
31. Now we're going to need 60 times 31. You're going to need a bigger pot. Yeah, you're going to need 186 ounces to be mavatal more. Okay, so it makes a huge difference. The Machaber is not, I'm just pointing it out. The Ramah is going to point it out later. But this whole tziyur over here, this whole description over here, only works according to the Machaber. Because otherwise, what does it help to add on later? So you're going to add another. Now it's going to be shishim. What did that help you? So you have 60 times the piece of non-kosher chicken, but you don't have 60 times everything that became treif as a result of that nevela. Okay, so that's because the Machaber does not hold by this principle of tichanas and nevela by other prohibitions, only by basar b'chol. Clear?
Does mixing the pot fall into the same category as adding heter?
Does mixing the pot fall into the same category? What? Bittul isur l'chatchila?
Yeah.
Near of a kisei. You remember back over there in basar b'chol. So that's one of the things, if you recall. So I threw in this line about how the poskim speak about whether there's a problem of bittul l'chatchila over there. After you learn this, after today's shiur, go back and learn that, and you'll see it with different through a different set of glasses. Very good point. Okay, but let's go further. So that was sif. Hey, you look in the upper left over here, some tzadik tes sivav, and this talking about an issur d'rabban. So you can't really tell from the piece of chicken, but this is only a issur d'rabban. What kind of issur d'rabban could it be? The piece of chicken, whatever the case is, it's an issur d'rabban. Shame. So we also have these two different possible cases. So the right-hand case, to mix it straight in, it's the exact same thing. Where they're learning now only the Machaber, not the Ramah. Okay, fell in, bittul b'shishim. Okay, you're not allowed to do that because there's a prohibition of doing that, the mevatel isur l'chatchila. But the shaila is, let's say it's an issur d'rabbanan. Are you allowed to mix it in, or are you not allowed to mix it in? It's a machlekes. Okay, so here's the case. They add it in, but if it's an issur d'rabbanan, what's the story? The Shulchan Aruch says it's okay. We're soon going to see the Shulchan Aruch inside. Shulchan Aruch says from issur d'rabbanan, we don't have this problem of mavatal isur l'chatchila if it fell first into the heter and now you're adding isur. Where it comes from, we're going to see in the next slide. It comes from a Gemara. And we'll see where it comes from. And the fact is that you think Gemara makes it more difficult to understand. The reality is Gemara makes it easier to understand. But in any case, as far as the words are concerned, bittul isur. So over here, on the right-hand side, so the bittul isur, you took an isur and you nullified it by throwing it into the pot. Over here, the action is adding heter, it's not adding isur. So the Machaber says that that's okay. But the Ramah says, no, it's asur. Both cases are asur. So according to the Ramah, you don't really need this sivav over here because there's no difference whether it's an issur d'oraisa or issur d'rabbanan. Machaber splits it into two sifim because the Machaber holds that it's there's a difference between whether it's an issur d'oraisa or an issur d'rabbanan. The Alter Rebbe passing like the Ramah. Here's a whole interesting discussion, things which are not d'oraisa, not in the Rabban. Let's say if something was also mishum sakana, say fish and meat. So fish and meat, so you're not allowed to mix together. So that you have dvarim asurim mishum sakana. Semekufta has zayin, the chelik beis yerodeya. So it speaks about things which are prohibited because they're dangerous. So the question is, first of all, there's the machlekes over there, shachantas, whether we say there's bittul b'shishim, or we say, no, chamira sakanta misura, the things which are danger are more strict than things which are prohibited, and therefore there's b'chal no bittul b'shishim. Okay, but the Evesh Asadchak will pass on that there's bittul b'shishim, but now do we treat this? Okay, so we're going to treat it like a regular issur, but which one do we treat it like? Midiraisa, Midirabban, and the whole discussion. Pischat Shuv brings it down. Whole discussion over there in Kufta Zayin. But now let's get to the Makar Din. Very, very fascinating din over here. This is in Gemara Beya, right at the beginning, Daf Gimel. And it's an Hilchas Yom Tif. It's a din Hilchas Yom Tif. Tov Kuf Zayin, if I'm not mistaken. So Hashem helped us, and we have Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch on it. No, everybody should be saying L'chaim V'Heitevis. But you have Svarim, and today you have the Svarim with all the Maram Mekamis. Just Agav, if you want to look in the new Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, so there's a Mafteach. There's a whole volume of Mafteach. And it has Mafteach in Yonim, it also has a Mafteach in Makedas. So it gives Pesukim and Chumash and Gemaras, and it also gives references to Shulchan Aruch. So if you want to see where it is in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it's discussed any din. You take a look in the back on the Shulchan Aruch, Yeredeya, Simon Tzadik Tes, Sif Hey, and you'll find Sif Hey and Sif Vav. So you'll find this in Ilchas Yom Tif. I think it's Tav Kuf Zayin, if I'm not mistaken. Any case, what's the case? Omar Rav Masna. We learn Shtukah Gemara now. Rav Masna said as follows: Eitzim shanoshru min hadekel l'teich hataner b'yom tov. So you had an oven, and people would cook on Yom Tov. So you had an oven, and there was wood inside the oven. The wood was put there before Yom Tov, and it was designated to be used as fuel. And cooking on Yom Tov, Melechas Eichel Nefesh, you're allowed to make a fire in order to cook, and you're allowed to cook the food on Yom Tov. So that wood is all part of the cooking process. Okay. The problem is that there was a tree above this oven, and a branch fell off the tree on Yom Tov into the oven. That's fell off the palm tree. So a palm branch fell into the oven, and the problem with that is that it's muktzah. There was no preparation that this should be used for Yom Tov, and therefore it's muktzah. And muktzah is Yom Tov too. On the contrary, it's even more strict by Yom Tov than it is by Shabbos. So now the question is, what's the story with this? You're allowed to make a fire there or not? And I will just mention, the Gemara is soon going to mention, and we're going to have soon in those the latest simanim, included in those things which are not nullified b'shishim, is a davar sheyesh l'matirin, something which is going to become permitted at a later point. There's no concept of bittul. So this wood, which is muktzah, is going to become permitted after Yom Tov. So it's a davar sheyesh l'matirin. So it looks like we don't even have any bittul over here. You would normally look for bittul berev for such a thing. You're not eating it. There's no shishim over here. There's no time. But bittul berev, acher rabim lahates. But over here, it's a davar sheish matirin. So what are we going to do? So anyway, the Gemara is going to discuss this soon. In any case, the Gemara says as follows: Be mavatalit. Okay, put on the back shelf davar sheish matirin. The Gemara says, Mar be'aleim eitzim muchanim u'masikon. Make a majority of wood that was muchanim, that was already prepared before Yom Tov, and light the whole thing on fire. So you're going to have majority. Why this is not a problem with Davar Yesh Matir in the Gemara? That's what I'm going to say. So you put majority of permitted wood, and then you have a minority of prohibited wood, and you make the whole thing go on fire. The Gemara says, but when you stir it up, you're going to be stirring up something which is prohibited. It's muktzah. So the Gemara says, not a problem. Keeping the ruba that teirininu, since the majority is heter, the majority is something which is allowed. That when you stir it, you're stirring up something which is mutter. Then the Gemara says, but we have a problem with bittul l'chatchila. Utnan, whole discussion, what exactly is this Mishnah? Not going to go into it now. These words, we don't see it in the Mishnah. The concept you see. In any case, we have this principle, so how are you allowed to add the wood? So Gemara says, when does the prohibition apply of ein mevatel lechatchila? Only if it's an issa d'oraisa. But if it's only a prohibition, mid'rabanan you're mevatel. And this is the source for the mechaber saying in Siv Vav that if what you're adding is heter, He's not going further. He's not saying that if it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, there's B'chal no Isser of Ein Mevatel Isser Lechatchila. He's not going so far. But in the two possible cases that you're throwing in the Isser, or you're throwing in Heter to outweigh the Isser, so we see from this case, you're allowed to take wood, which was Heter, and to add it on top and be Mevatel it. So there's a difference between Midaraisa and Midarabanan. And that's the source for the Machaber. So then say, hey, if it's Midaraisa, you're not allowed to do either case. But if it's Midarabanan, the second case, where you're adding Heter, that you're allowed to do. Then the Gemara asks, well, Rav Ashi, the Rav Ashi said in the previous daf that Davar Sheish Matirin applies even if it's an Isser D'Rabbanan. So in this case, the Muktzah is an Isser D'Rabbanan. It's Muktzah on Yom Tov, and it's Davar Sheish Matirin. So why is there bittul over here? Michael Meber, what can you answer? So he answers, Hanimile Hecha de Isel Lisura Be'ena. So when do these words apply? That it's not batul when the Isser is by itself, and you're getting benefit from the Isser. You're getting prohibited benefit. But over here, the Yisura is getting burned up. Mikla kal Yisura means it's being burned up. So when are you getting benefit from this wood? Only after it becomes ois metzias. So therefore, it's a special case. Normally, we would say it's not batul davar sheish matirin, but over here you're getting the hana when it's already finished from the world. Only after it burns do you get the benefit from the wood. Okay, so therefore, we're left with this principle over here. We see where the Machaber got it from. That why we are lenient by an Isser D'Rabbanan, then we're going to say that as long as you're adding Heter to nullify it, then it's going to become batul. So where does the Ramah come off and say that it's aser? So the nice Kalim point out that over here it's only mutter because mikla kali surah. This is a special case why it's mutter. Okay, the Machaber will answer you. You only need the mikla kali yisura because there's davar sheish matirin. But if it's something like nevela or something like that, there's no davar sheish matirin. The thing would be batul b'shishim. Okay, so now we don't need mikla kali yisura. No, would learn that it goes on everything. And takad al Rebbe, we have nuchas yom tov, al Rebbe paskins like that. So you have the Ram, the Shulchan Aruch, B'Isser D'Rabbanan, Mutal Laharbas, Heter Gedei Levatel L'Seiser. That's what it says in the Gemara, at least in the highlighted part in yellow. Clear. If it's B'Isser D'Rabbanan, you can add Laharbas Heter. That was the left-hand case. Okay, but the Ramah doesn't agree. Sounds like the Rosh. Rak B'Isser D'Rabbanan Shem Miskale. Miskale means it's disappearing. It's getting burned up. Then mutter laharbe to levatel l'ser. So that's the case where it's mutter. So you need not only that it's an Isser D'Rabbanan and that you're adding heter to nullify it, but it's also something the mikla kal isur. Where the Shulchan Aruch, the Ram Shulchan Aruch Chaber are learning that that's only because of the special case of davar sheish matirin, and the Rosh and the Ma learn the Gemara differently, and they say that that's going to apply in any case of Isser D'Rabbanan. You're only allowed to do it l'chatchila if it's becoming ois metzias, when it's getting burned up and it's disappearing. Questions? Silence. I know silence is golden or silence is silence. Let's learn inside Shulchan Aruch. So now we have all the background. This is Sif Hey and Vav, and these PowerPoints they chop it up. Not bringing the entire din. If you want to see the entire din, you see in your chaveres, it's printed very nice. So all three sifim are all on one page, mamash mechaya, and took out the Ramah that's speaking about different dinyanim. So there's a whole big Ramah over here on Sif Hey that we're going to get back to. But in order to get clear this specific din, all you need is what's on the screen right now. So Sif Hey, aim about lin isur lechatchila. You're not allowed to nullify an isur lechatchila. And that's the first case where you threw the Isser into something which was kosher, and it's more than and it's batul b'shishim. And even if it fell into heter, but they did not have the amount to nullify it, which was like on the left-hand side, that where you didn't have shishim and it fell in. So then what do you want to do? You want to add heter? Ein meisifin alav heter kadei levatli. You're not allowed to add heter to be mevatlit. Okay, and this is talking about, we'll soon see it, it's talking about an Issa D'Oraisa. So even though the Gemara allowed it, but that was only Muktzah Midrabban. Sivav, Issa Shal Divrayim, what happened to Issa D'Rabban? Ein Ma'ar ben Issa B'Yodayim Kadei Levatli. So to throw the Isser in, that was the right-hand case we had before, to nullify it, you're not allowed to do, even according to the Mechaber, and even if it's an Issa D'Rabban. Vim also came b'meizid also. Now he's giving you the din of b'diavad too, and if you did it on purpose, we're going to come back to the din of b'diavad soon. If you did it b'meizid and you did it on purpose, then the food is also. But if it's the left-hand case that it fell in by itself, and you don't have enough of the kosher in order to nullify the non-kosher that fell in, you can add on more kosher and nullify it. That's the psak and mechaber. That's what we just saw in the previous slide, how they learn the Gemara differently. That so you see in Sif Hey that regardless of how, whether it's the right hand case or the left hand case, you added the heter, you added the iser, both of them are prohibited. But if this is the rabbanon, mechaber holds that to add the iser you're not allowed to do, and even bid the evidence also. But the amazing the shegig when it applies really to all the cases, but he holds that to throw the issa the rabban inside you're not allowed, but if it already fell inside and you just have to add heter, so then marbi alav mavatli, just like the case in the Gemara where you added more wood. But the Ramah comes in and says no, v'yesheimrim dein lavatl issa the rabban eila issa falav kamei b'issa d'oraisa. Okay, ein lavatul iser, which is the right hand case. Or to add more heter to it, which is the left hand case. It's the same thing with the rabbanis and kamo b'isa d'oraisa. V'kein negin ve'ein lashanis, and that's the custom, and you're not allowed to change it to b'shem harosh. Okay, like we saw in the previous slide. Okay. So that is the basic fundamental din, sort of the chut hashedra, around what everything else is now going to revolve. You basically learned, okay, we're going to have to deal with shaking a message soon, but this is the basic mechaber you have for Sifhei and Vav. Now the Shach brings down, we mentioned this before, he brings down that the Rabbi holds that this is a prohibition min atera. But the halach is it's midrabban, it's an issa d'rabbanan mavatal neschachatchila. The native Yehuda brings down a case where he holds it's going to be midraisa. It's a Taruvos yavish beyavish. Shetame issa loy misarav imater yesh nesim min atayr l'arav isarim heter. That since it's not really the bittul of yavish beyavish, it's the thing is still sitting. Let's say you have a salami, so you have a kosher, you have a couple of kosher salamis over there, and falls in a nevela, falls in. They're out of the packaging, and you don't know which one is which. Okay, so over there to do that lechatchila with it, nothing's really being mixed together over here. It's a different sort of taruvos. That's why yavish beyavish we'll see in Simon Kuftes has a whole different set of dinim. We're going to do it earlier on the seder over here. They don't wait till the end for Simon Kuftes because that's do in general with the dinim a bit. But in any case, we learned a few nekudas from Simon Kuftes previously, but the yavish is different. And although in general the poskim hold the bittul isel chatchil is nisa derabban, so the Nedibo holds that in such a case it would be midiraisa. Now there's a shach over here that points out something which is a whole to do in the poskim. That we just finished Hanukkah this week, and but if you didn't burn up the leftover oil, which is in your maneda, so you're just in time to learn this shach, to learn this din. Because we see over here that the Ramah prohibits being a mavatal and isnad in any form. But if you look in Hilchas Chanukah and you have the leftover oil, which was in the maneda, and that is a prohibition, midrabban, the whole Chanukah midrabban. you prohibited it. Huktzal mitzvah, it was designated for a mitzvah. The leftover oil in the bottle, that was never designated. I mean, if you went to the store and you say, I'm buying this, you made all achana, and you bought a bottle of oil to use for Hanukkah, that doesn't make it huktzal mitzvah. When you pour it into the menorah and you light it, so then you have already it's huktzal mitzvah. So it didn't burn all the way to the bottom, leftover oil. So practically speaking, who exactly wants to use that? Although somebody asked me this Yataki wanted to use it for a yahrzeit licht. So that's interesting because it's huktzal mitzvah. The shaila is the same level of mitzvah. The pale poskim say you're not allowed. Shaila can use it for Shabbos licht. Over there, they also poskim right. It's not allowed. That's a whole other discussion. But lemaisa, this leftover oil is muktzah. You're not allowed to use it. Are you allowed to be marbi alav mavatal? You look over there, Hilchas Chanukah. And the Rama brings down a day. The Shulchan Aruch brings a day. Yeah, this is not even the Rama. The Shulchan Aruch. So over here, the Mechaber holds you're allowed to add on heter if it's an Issa D'Rabbanan. Shulchan Aruch Hilchas Chanukah. What does it say over there in Hilchas Chanukah? This is him in Tov Reish Ayin Zayin Sif Dalit Haneiser B'Yem Hashmini Min Hashemen Hatzorach L'Shir Adlaka. So the leftover oil after the 8th lichtul, the leftover oil, which you need for Shir Adlaka, there's another, it's a little late for Hilchas Chanukah, but the Hilchas Chanukah person is allowed to make a tanai. But you need the tanai, you don't need the tanai. The oil has to burn for a half hour. In a Chabad, we make it burn for 50 minutes. In any case, a person can make a tanai and say, whatever burns for the Shir Hadlaka, that is designated for the mitzvah. But anything after that is not part of the mitzvah. No, there's no hiddur mitzvah having a menorah burn longer. If you have candles, so it looks nice to have longer candles, but it's not they're adding a little bit of oil so it should burn longer. There's no hiddur mitzvah in that. It's not a gedder hiddur. It's not a gedder mitzvah. So it's just extra oil. So a person can make it tonight. But let's say it blew out after 25 minutes. Okay, so there's some oil left over there, which is mamish huktzal mitzvah. So what do you have to do? So you have to make a separate fire. You shouldn't get benefit from it because it was designated for a mitzvah and it's muktzah, not allowed to use it. Let's say it got mixed into other oil. Somebody said, oh, there's some leftover oil. I'll put it back in the jar. And they pour it back inside the jar. And there's no shishim to nullify it. So what would you think the din would be according to the Mechaber here? According to the Mechaber, we just learned, what does he say by Ibn Issa D'Rabbanan? You're allowed to add. If it was already put in, you're allowed to add to be mavatal it, but over here, yesh mishayim shein lahesib olav kadei lavatle. The opposite of what he says over here, even though it's only in Issa D'Rabbanan. And over in Hilchas Chanukah, so he says not to do it. And over here, he says it's okay to do it. The Ramah says you can't do it. But over here, the Mechaber says you can, yes. We don't care how you do it. Excuse me. I'm sorry. The Ramah doesn't care how you do it. It's also in any case. The Mechaber says that if you to throw in the Yisr Rabbanan is prohibited. But if it already fell in, then to add on heter, then you're allowed. That's what the Mechaber said. So, l'chore, if you would just look over here in Simon Tzadik Test and Yeredeya, you would say, oh, it's an Issa D'Rabbanan, and it already fell in, so I can pour more kosher oil on top of it, and everything's going to be okay until there's shishim. Okay, but over there in Hilchas Chanukah, he brings the Yesh Mishay Mishay Ein Leisable of Kedei Levatla. So what is going on over here? Shaila is clear. Got to stop the share. Everybody's here. I just see pictures of everybody. There's live people here.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Chevra. No, what do you say? Shaila's clear. Yeah? Shaila's clear.
Yeah.
Okay, someone gonna have the teretz clear. So the teretz, the answer is, okay, it's not just the answer. We're gonna have 3 answers. Shach says, is machmirim yeser. It's a mitzvah. It's more strict than other isurim derubah. So don't bring me a raya from over there in Hilchas Chanukah. It's Huktzul Mitzvasi. It's different, special stringency of Huktzul Mitzvasi. That's what the Shach says. The Magen Avram over there in Or Chaim, in Hilchas Chanukah, he has another two terutzim. First of all, says the Magen Avram, and I imagine some of you thought of this on your own. It doesn't really. Yesh Misha Emer is not a psak. Not really a psak. It's a Yesh Misha Emer. See, the Machab is telling you that there's an opinion like that. Over here, he says Tam you're allowed, and he's saying there's somebody that's a machmer over there. Okay, according to the Teretz of Magen Avram, we still have to understand why you have that opinion over there and you don't have it over here. But it's not mamash astira that over there he's saying you are allowed, and here he's saying you're mamash not allowed. He's saying that the Yesh Misha Emer says you're not allowed. And the Magen Avram brings another teretz. Chanukah can be considered Davar Sheishel Matirin. So man denkt sich, what does it mean Davar Sheishel Matirin? How's it Davar Sheishel Matirin? If you're going to leave it over for next Chanukah, what exactly is a Davar Sheishel Matirin? But in any case, that's the Magen Avram brings terutzim and all the achreinim mafalpel in this inyan about how to be mashve these two inyonim. I mean, a certain way you could put together the first two. It's clear, you notice right away that over there in Hilchas Chanukah says it's only a Yesh Misha Emer. Over here in Taruvos, he just says it's time, you're allowed to do it. Over there, it says Yesh Misha Emer, you're not allowed to do it. You want to know why it is as Yesh Misha Emer over there, so you can use one of these other terutzim. It's Huktzul Mitzvasi more strict. Perhaps you could use a combination of answers. Yeah. Okay. Questions? Next case. What is the dinner of Michael now? This is the second major subject in this din of Mevatel Isal Chatchila. What's the dinner of the Michael? First, we have the dinner of Adam. Are you allowed to do it or you're not allowed to do it? But now, let's say somebody did it. What's the din if it was done? Are you allowed to eat the food? You're not allowed to eat the food. Let's be practical now. So, we have two different perspectives on this, and it would be very fascinating to go into the mucker for this. We don't really have time to do that, but basically the Shulchan Aruch differentiates. We have a case where it's mutter, we have a case that it's asur. Which is a case that it's mutter? The Shulchan Aruch says it's there in shegeg and mezid. Shegeg was done unintentionally, and mezid it was done on purpose. So the right answer, in bitla b'shegeg hamaychol mutter. If it was done unintentionally, and we're going to have a more precise definition of what it means shegeg in this context. If it was done b'shegeg, so then the food is okay. You're allowed to eat the food. In bitla b'mezid, but if it was done on purpose, hamaychol asur. The food is asur. Now, who is it prohibited to? Why should it be asur? It's a knas. So who does it make sense to give this penalty to? Give the penalty to the one that did it. Lamavatel, to the person that nullified it. Ulakol misha bitla b'shvile. And anyone else that he did it for. The whole idea of the penalty, the knas, is to make sure this person doesn't do it again. Or you would if you would allow him to do it, it said then if you allow him to eat the food, excuse me, if you allow him to eat the food, so then what's going to happen in the future? So there's a whole discussion we have it often in Hilchas Shabbos. Gozru mezid otu shegeg. Shegeg got the mezid, excuse me. We prohibit the shegeg because the person might do it b'mezid and say he was shegeg. Okay, so we prohibit the mezid. Sometimes even prohibit the shegeg. Over there, they weren't prohibiting the shegeg. What are you worried about over here? Tachpatel. It's nullified. There's no taste in there. Why should you prohibit it? So those that say that he would ask a nachri to do it. He'll ask a nachri to do it. So the nachri doesn't have to keep it. It's not the rice and not the rabban. So the nachri will be mabatal it. Yeah. And then you'll say, okay, it was already done. So now I'll eat it. So we say no, the one that he was mavatlit for who? For the guy that sent him. So he's not allowed to eat it either. So you answer the guy that was mavatlit, so he shouldn't benefit from the Isser. I mean, the guy has a piece of chicken there that's treif. So he said, why I should throw a piece of chicken in the garbage because it's treif? Let's say it wasn't salted, or it was sitting more than 72 hours before you salted, whatever the case is. You know, you can't eat a piece of chicken. So he says, okay, I got another 61 pieces. I'll throw it into the pot. And I'll get another piece of chicken. Why should I throw chicken in the garbage? You know, people in the house, you can't imagine somebody thinking like this. But when I was learning Nikur, you cut off the forbidden fats and you take out the forbidden veins. So there was an old butcher that was teaching me. And he said, in order to give hashgacha, you have to understand how the butcher thinks. He says, this is how the butcher thinks. He takes his knife and he trims off a piece of meat and fat mixed together. He says, 75 cents in the garbage, $2 in the garbage, so 25 cents in the garbage. He's cutting off pieces over there. This is what he's thinking over there. He's cutting away pieces of meat. To me, it looks like he's cutting pieces of meat. He's thinking he's cutting off cash. You know, so the guy who's going to be mavatal, he wants to get the rebach from it. Bepashtis. He wants to get some of the benefit from it. So you answer the one that is doing it, that he shouldn't get benefit from it, and anybody else he did it for also is not allowed to have benefit from it. So what is considered now to be a shegeg? The classic case of shegeg is the person didn't know it was treif, for example. He didn't know it was nevele, didn't know it was asar, and he threw it inside. What are the cases of shegeg that we have over here? So the Taz goes through it like this. Let's say the person made a mistake in the din. Let's say choshev shemutel levatel. He didn't know about this whole din of mevatel lechatchila. He didn't know the din keshegeg. Taz says he's also treated like a shegeg. We have all discussion in the beginning of Shin Yud Ches and El Shabbos. Alter Rebbe speaks about what happens if a person did a isser. On Shabbos, you're allowed to have a person cooked on Shabbos. Can you have a so if it's mazid, if it's shegeg? Alter Rebbe goes into this a bit in the beginning of Shin Yud Ches also. And a person that makes a mistake in the din, so that's in general, it's called a shegeg. It's in general called Eimer Mutter. The person thought it was allowed. The person thought it was okay. Now, if he asked the Rav, and the Rav told him it was Mutter, and you find out later for whatever reason it was Asr, then it's also called a shegeg. He was relying on the Rav, and the Rav told him it's okay. Let's say he didn't ask a Rav, and this is very, very fascinating. So you wonder what smicha is all about. It's not just smicha. You need a meira hira. So the Taz says if he asks somebody, even if it's a Talmud Chacham, but he's not a Rav meira hira, he's not somebody that paskins dinam, so then that's not called shegeg anymore. If he has a Rav and the Rav made a mistake, okay, you know, the Rabban can make mistakes. You have all Masechta Herius. What happens? The Sanhedrin can make a mistake. Not only the Sanhedrin can make a mistake, they can make a mistake in Isser Koris. That's even a bigger mistake. So, yeah, mistakes happen. Okay, but if you ask the Rav and he made a mistake, so then it's called shegeg. But Avali, the left-hand side, Avali Misyaetzim Talmud Sheina Meira. He asked the Talmud Chacham, but he's not a Meira, Dinnik Mezid. That's called Mezid. You should ask a Rav. If the Rav told you it's okay, that's different. But if it wasn't the Rav telling it's okay, so that's called b'mezid, and the food becomes prohibited. Yeah, so this you have Taz, the Piskei Tshuva brings down. It's about a Meira Heroz and Piskei Tshuva Hey. And that's the general parameters of shegeg. Okay. Now, yeah, question.
Does mazid apply also to a guy who does it on his own?
Oh, thank you for leading into the next slide. So this Inyan, Lamavatu, Komisha Bitla Bishvile. See how the Alter Rebbe brings down this Inyan also. The person's family. He was doing it for his family also, so they're included in the Shabitl Bishvile. Let's say so you have somebody in a factory. Say if a Yid owns a factory. So who is the bitla b'shvila. So he's got Jewish customers. Let's say he's selling to Eden. So then with everybody, that's certainly bitla b'shvila. Now, let's say the person that nullified it wasn't Jewish, or the people that he's selling it to are not Jewish. Okay, for him, it's not an Isser. So is that called Mibatel Isser? So as we said before, when it comes to the Inyan of Shlichus, we say the Lagabi, the Inyan of Shlich Shalom Kamei, hold in a Shlich Shalom Kamei. Most of the people are Shluchim, yeah? So Shlich Shalom Kamei. Kamei Mamish. So you have Shlichus La'akum, you don't have Shlichus La'nachar, we don't have such a thing. Matam b'nei bris, av shluchacham b'nei bris, says in the Gemara. Okay, so you can't make a nachri into shlich. But when it comes to Amir Nachri, so the Alter Rebbe Paskin is like Rashi. Rashi brings down that there is a concept of shlichus by a Nachri l'chumra, that you consider him that he's doing it for you. So if a person tells a Nachri to do a malacha on Shabbos, do a prohibited act on Shabbos, midrabban, as if you did it. A person asks a Nachri to light a fire on Shabbos. Midrabban, it's as if the Yid lit the fire. We say shlichus l'nachri l'chumra. So the Alter Rebbe brings Shulchan Aruch. When he discusses this, he says it applies not only to Hilchos Shabbos, it applies to all other Isurim too. So you have over here, so if the Yid told the Nachri to do it, so then we have a problem. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to discuss this, and this is a very big, very big topic, but a lot of applications to it. So that's the first question. Let's say the other people don't know. So you have a guy in the factory, he's amazing, but the people are going to eat it at the b'shegig. He didn't tell anybody. Shai is, how did they find out about it? Who's exactly asking the shaila if they don't know about it? But maybe it's the storekeeper. Is he allowed to sell it to other people? He's not the one that's eating it. In any case, we have a machlekes. The Taz brings down from Marshal. In mission is battle b'shvil eini yadesh bitla avura yeser dina keshegig mutala lachol atavshel. Now, whether the store owner will be able to sell it to him or not is another question. But there's no lifnei iver if he's mutter to eat it. If he's b'shegeg, so then you're not causing him to do an isser. Okay, but the Rivash, the Rabbi Kiva Eger brings him down and says, no. If a person with Mavatal isser and he's expecting people are going to buy it, it's like the guy that nullified it for the people in his house. Here, they're not in his house, they're in their own houses, but he made it for retail. He's doing it for sale, so then whoever buys it, that's his customers. It's also for them to eat the tafshel. Practically speaking, they're not going to know. But then the isser is going to be to give it to them, to sell it to them for somebody that does know. Okay, so that's a basic issue, which is now going to come down to the question which you're asking. Let's say you have a non-Jewish factory, and they're mixing in an isser there, but it's bottled. I take this off the screen over here so you don't read it. Let's just talk about this. Let's chazer over, because we spoke about a few inyanim. You always have to chazer over inyanim bittul. And just by the way, not only do we have it early in Tzadik Tes and in Simon Tzadik Tes, but we had a lot of klolim of bittul back in Basar B'chalav too. Not everything is repeated in each place. Okay, but let's talk about some basic inyanim that we spoke about. B'chal is something bottle, is it not bottle? It's not talking about davish matir and something exotic like that. So let's talk about not everything so exotic. When we talk about a berel, but let's say you have additives. You have we spoke about flavorings. We spoke about different processing agents. There's oils. There's fats. There's all different sorts of things. I mean, virtually every pill, if you look on today they put the non-medicinal ingredients on medications. You look at the medicinal ingredients, so it's some sort of medication, which is usually not a problem. General is not a problem, but the non-medicinal ingredients can have all sorts of stuff over there. In the process of making pills, they're almost always using stearates. Stearates is davar yitzim and in general. Magnesium stearate, different types of stearates. So the shaila, what's with this pills? It's not derech achila, the person's achila, whatever the case is. We have different attainment, but there's a lot of times where there's isurim going into things, but for them it's not an iser. They're not even putting it there because they want the food. In the case with the Tzemach Tzedek, we learned about derech hasiyos b'kach. If it's part of the recipe, it's never bottled. Again, but then Tzemach Tzedek brings down, yeah, but if it's put there not because they want it there, it's just helping their processing. Spoke about the people that are making sugar, and they used to put blood into the sugar when they boiled up the sugar cane in order to take out the impurities. It was used as a clarifying agent. So then that's a different story. We don't say derech hasiyos b'kach. Aside from the fact that they're filtering it out, but even if not, we don't have this chumer derech hasiyos b'kach unless they really want it there. It ends up that you're eating it, but nevertheless, less than shishim, it's bottled. So that when you have what's derech hasiyos b'kach, so it could be b'chal, it's not bottled. But let's say it is bottled. Okay, but now we have a problem of mavatal list al chatchil. Let's talk about hashkacha. You have a hechsher. Are you allowed to give a hechsher to a factory, and you know that there's a davar aser inside, but it's bottled b'shisha? Is the food kosher? The food's kosher. If he was making one nachrim, making it for a bunch of other nachrim, I'm sure the food is kosher. If there's no b'shlakim, obviously if the kelim are kosher and the ingredients are kosher. But at that point, is everything okay there? It was a bottle b'shisha. But what happens when you put your hechsher on it? Comes the stempel from the hechsher, and it's being put on this. And now he's making it for who? He's making it for Yidden too. So do we go both a rave? Then Hilchah Shabbos, you look to see if Nachri lit a fire, he turned on the lights. You see, is it the Rave Nachrim or Rave Yehudim? You see, you go after the majority. Who is he lighting the fire for? Unless he uses it himself, he's lighting it for himself. But the person that's selling the food, see, he wants the hechsher on the food. Obviously, he's selling for Yidden also. So there's a whole big tararam in the poskim. Can we say l'mavat list l'chatchil in this case? For the Nachri, it's not even iser. But you're putting a hechsher on it. So in general, the practice of the kashrus organizations, and it was a psak for Rabbi Feinstein about this, to the best of my recollection, look it up, that you should not put a hechsher on such, even though it's bottled, that you have to make sure that all the ingredients that are being put in over there are kosher. So here he brings down a mifal shel goyim shemara b'isur b'masrim im kivnu laharbis l'tzeder l'kuchas Yehudim ma'ichalasa. So obviously, if they're doing because they want Yidden to buy the food, maybe it's another knetch that it's you're putting in the iser because the Yidden want the extra thing that you put in. But b'derech when you're talking about an industrial environment, so they're putting in because this is the way you make the food. So being aim kavanos l'tzeder l'kuchas Yehudim, but if they don't have intention for their Jewish customers, so then there's a machlekes poskim. Yesh machmirim writes over Agadas Ribosh. It's more than yesh machmirim. B'chal, that's the standard in the kashrus industry, is to not allow it. Now, if something happened by mistake, it's a different story. And you're not wasn't done with a reshus and something happened. Something fell in, just like you have in a home, something fell in. They're not doing it on purpose, and it's not the inyan of mevatel l'chatchil. Let's say something was mislabeled and they put it in. So they put it in on purpose. Didn't fall in by itself. But if they say something was mislabeled, it was labeled kosher, no, and it wasn't. It's mislabeling. It happens. So they put it in. So that's called mevatel l'chatchil. They didn't know it was just also b'chal. So all knas doesn't really make sense in such a case. You have different types of medications. Homeopathic remedies, for example, whole confusion. It's very fascinating because there's one taina that says it's so much a bottle a million times over. They keep diluting it and diluting it and diluting it and diluting it. It's bottle up some many times over, but they're doing it all on purpose. And it's not only that, they're not being mavatlid. They hold. I'm not going into whether what the Torah says about homeopathy or not. We're talking about the kashrus shabadavar. They mean mavatal it, or they're strengthening it. They hold, the more you dilute it, the stronger it becomes. So that's called bittul.
More chashav.
Have more of a pu'ula. And have more of a pu'ula. It's also, it goes into Rosh Hashanah davar ha'maimit. If you have once somebody asked me about a homeopathic remedy, and the active ingredient was snake venom. Mamish nachash aktameni. It wasn't nachash aktameni, it was his relative, but whatever the case, mamish from a nachash. Okay, so it's one part out of who knows how many million. Okay, but they hold that that's the ikir. It's the chemai, but the whole thing. Okay, so it's Mr. Deraisa, Mr. Rabbanim. Sometimes it's chalvakum. There's all different things that go into it.
When they make the
Finish the Ryan in the
homeopathy-
Ganze. I'm not giving you a psak din about homeopathy. I'm just opening your eyes to how this inyan of Mavatal Lissa Lechatchila shows up in all different sorts of cases. Yeah. Question?
When we say mazid, it means that you have kavana to be mevatel it, or that you had kavana to put it inside.
So having kavanah to put it inside is not enough to answer it. Like we saw before, that the person didn't know that it was aser. So then that's still called shegeg. But there's all different sorts of cases that are on the borderline between what's shegeg and what's mazid. And this, that the nachri, since for him it's not a iser. If you put an ever nachai, it's one thing, but it's not even nachai. It's just something which is he's allowed to eat, and the people that keep kosher not allowed to eat, then it's a different story. So you have to be done in each case, lagufa shalinyan, what exactly applies and what doesn't apply. Okay, I'm getting a bit weiter. Now, you remember we spoke about chtichnas and levela. Yes, now we're coming back over here to the Ramah. So remember we had those cases between the left-hand case and the right-hand case, yeah, that if you had some issa that fell into a some issa fell into less than shishim, and so the Mechaber says if an issa derabanan marbel love, you can add more heter to it and nullify it in 60 times more. That's what the Mechaber said in issa derabanan. And we asked, what's with the din of chtichanas and avela? So the Mechaber is not a problem. He does hold from chtichanas and avela if it's not possible. But the Ramah does. So the Ramah comes in over here and says, wait a minute, what happened to chtichanas and avela? Are you going to be marbel? What is that going to help? It's a problem. It's a problem. But the Ramah says, but remember, I had some exceptions over there. You remember way back when in Simon Tzadik Beis, we learned about chtichanas and avela. So the Ramah had two exceptions to the rule, two major exceptions that he mentions over here. So now you're going to have some chazara from Simon Tzadik Beis. What are the exceptions to the din of Nas and Avela? That's what he says right over here. Das Ramah sheyesh chanan chtich Nas and Avela b'shari surim. Be'ez afanim nidin lahater as hamaychel g'shasifa heter b'shegig. So if a person added the heter, so when is it going to be mutter? So on the right hand side, Taruvos yovesh beyovesh. Yovesh beyovesh, we don't say that there's chtichanas and avela. Chtichanas and avela is because the tam, the taste, got mixed up with the other thing. But you have two salamis sitting in the drawer next to each other, sitting on a plate next to each other. One's not mashpia tam onto the other one. Each one is sitting there by itself. So when it comes, the Ramah said back over there in Tzadik Beis, so you said that there's the chtichanas and avela b'shari surim, but not when it's yavesh v'yavesh. And he also mentioned over there the din of lach balach. So the din of lach balach is a machlekes rishonim, whether we say chtichanas and avela with lach balach. If you remember, we discussed that this whole gets all mixed up. It's not like this absorbed the iser. The whole thing got all mixed together. So the machlekes a pasuk, do we say lach balach, nas and avela if it's two liquids together? And the Ramah concluded if it's hefsed maruba, you can be making there's no chtichanas and avela lach balach. So therefore, what ends up is that the Ramah can agree with this Mechaber. Mechaber and Sivav, so Yosef, hey, it applies more to Sivav, that if you put it on purpose, then it's also. If it's shegeg, then it's mutter. But if the Nisa Derabanan and it fell in, Okay, so then you can add on the heter. So what is the Mechaber talking about? Either it's talking about case of Yavish b'Yavish, or it's talking about case of Lach b'Lach, perhaps a Maru. Ramah can learn like that. But other cases, the Mechaber, of course, doesn't differentiate. But that's the way the Ramah could end up agreeing with the Mechaber. So here you have some pieces of, I don't know, looks like chicken over here, and you have this colorful piece in the middle, which is a Taruvos Yavish b'Yavish. Okay, so the shaila is if there's no shishim over here, so let's say it was an issa d'rabbanan. Let's say there's no shishim. Can you add shishim to it? So the Mechaber says, yeah. If there was no shishim, you can add to it. What about the Ramah? So the Ramah, you want to tell me that it's chtichanas and avela? What good is it? Let's say it's 30 ounces of chicken there, kosher chicken. Fell in 1 ounce of non-kosher chicken. It's issa d'rabbanan. What happened to Nasa Nevel over here? Ramah says Nasa Nevel b'shari surim. So you can say, but the Ramah doesn't hold this Nasa Nevel b'Yavish. This piece of chicken is sitting over here. That piece of chicken is sitting over there. Let's say they're all cold. If they're hot, then we have to worry about them. But here, he added a bunch of more chicken over there. So Ramah can agree with that. We have no problem Nasa Nevel. And so too over here. Let's say you had 30 ounces of, looks like milk. Okay, then somebody poured in 1 ounce of non-kosher wine. Lach b'lach. Is it the Rabban? Stam yenim. If it's mamish was used for Veda Zor, it's a yein nesicham, it says in Azino. So it's the Raisa. But it's only awesome the Rabban. And it's lach b'lach. So then if it's hafser meruba, there's no nas in avail, you can add more milk to it. Yeah, that was the last case. We added some milk to it. Fine. Good. Let's learn a little more. Looking for a good stopping point over here. Okay, we'll do the next 2 slides, then we'll take a break. Okay, but now let's talk about a case where there is chanan. Magum sheish chanan. There's chitichanas namik again. Malach b'yavish. Here we have some soup, and you have some nevela fell inside. So the shaila over here is, let's say, according to the Ramah, if this nevela fell in when there was 30 ounces of soup, and then later on the person added another 30 ounces of soup, and there was only 1 ounce of treifa chicken, so what's going to be the din? The treifa chicken is batal b'shishim. Now let's say he brings the pat to the Rav, and he looks and says, how much chicken fell in? How much treifa chicken fell in over here? You can't find it, obviously. You can find it, you take it out. Then you still have to be mashar against the amount, like we learned before. But say, how much was it? To say all of these pieces of chicken are the same size, they're all 1 ounce. Good. How many ounces of soup do you have over here? Rabbi, I have 60 ounces, 61 ounces. I have enough to be mevat bashish. So now what is the Rav going to say? The Rav could say 1 or 2 things. The Rav could make a statement, or the Rav could ask a question. The Rav could say, kosher, batal b'shishim. Or the Rav could say, tell me something. Was there always 60 ounces of soup over here, or maybe you added it later? Because, when you're cooking, sometimes things boil out, and then you add a little bit. So what's going to be? Maybe he's going to ask the question. He says, oh, Rabbi, it's such an interesting question you asked me, because really, originally, there was only 30. There was only 30 ounces, but I added later on another ones. He says, Hanan, it's aser now. Changed from a psak din that is mutter. Now it's aser. Does the Rav have to ask that question? In other words, if somebody brings you a pat of 61 ounces, can you just say, okay, I'm going to be done the way it is? Or do I have to start making an investigation to figure out exactly what happened? So that, the time that the Rav is asked the question, you see it, it's the shishim. Do you have to make a chakira? Do you have to make an investigation? how it is, it fell in the tafshil, did it fell in, but the whole 60 was there, it was less than 60, and it was added. Do you have to make this investigation or not? And this gentleman, things are falling, they're coming up, yeah. So in that case, there was no shishim at first. And there, according to the Ramah, we say, I fell in another 30, yeah, but you have to be mavatal the 30 that was there before. 6 times 30 is 180, it's not enough to be mavatal this. So do you have to start making this investigation to see maybe that happened? So you have machlekes aposk. So the smag says, yeah, you have to make a chikira. You do have to look into it and see what happened. And the Torah says, no, ain't sarach lachem beisa eifin is batalis. You don't have to look into it. And that is the principle. They wrote it here. Let me see over here. Yeah, look at the bottom line. So the Ramah brings this down. He says, Lamaisa loy noga lachker levarakates is batalis. Lamaisa, the minig is not to do it. The reason, and Asa Kalim bring down that we don't, if the chazaka is, and now it's coming to shishim, so we assume that the way it is, that's the way it is. We don't, it's not enough of a chance that we have to look for this reisa. If the way it comes before you, Shaila, is that it's mutter, so then you don't have to worry, maybe before it was asr. So one brings a matter. One brings a matter. You look at it and it's good. And she says, yeah, but before it used to be no good. So if she knows it was no good, it's no good. Oh, okay, but if she says, I wasn't sure. Maybe it was a different color. Maybe it was a different color. Maybe a lot of things. But the Torah doesn't worry about this type of maybe. We don't assume that there's a problem. We have enough problems without creating more problems. So the Pri Chodesh Bemes, he holds that no, you have to make an investigation, you have to ask. Maybe it's something, maybe it differentiates between something which is rogil and something which is not rogil, something which happens frequently. So then it's whether it's chazaka that it happened like that, or it's not a chazaka that it happened like that, but it's something that's so common, you have to investigate something that happens very frequently. So it brings you a donut. Did you fry the donut? I mean, yeah, it looks like you fried the donut. So I don't have to worry it was fried. You have to worry it was fried. So, nevertheless, the psak din is that we don't need to worry about it. So now let's see it inside. So this is the Shulchan Aruch with the Ramah. So the parts that we learned before are now in gray. So we'll read the whole machaber over here. Ein mevatel nenisel lechatchila. This is sefei. Mafil nafel tech heter shein bashir levatle. And even if it fell into heter and there was not enough bashir, ein mesifin alav heter kadei levatle. You can't add it on heter. And this is sefei, which is talking about anissa diaraisa, and therefore in either case, it's prohibited. Sevav, the machaber differentiated by anissa derbanan between the two cases. Now, what's the din of b'diavad? We skipped right to Sivav to contrast the din midrash midrabanan, but now we're filling in the din. What's b'diavad? Avar or bitli? Let's say the person transgressed this and he did it. You tell the person, you're not allowed to do it. And he said, no, I did it. Now what? So avar or bitli, so if he was mavatl, he threw in the yeser, aisha riba love, or it fell into something which is less than shishim riba love means he added more heter to it. So what's the din? If it was b'shegeg, he did it, and the food is mutter. If it was mezir to happen, it's asr. Who is it asr to? L'mavatel atzmi, to the person who was mavatel it. Imushalei, we'll come back to in a second if it says. V'kein l'mishin is batel b'shvila, and so too whoever he was mavatel it for. Imushalei is the asr that belongs to him. A person, you can't go and be, if a person goes up to somebody else's food and then he wants to make him trouble and he throws an iser, so if it's bottle, it's bottle. He can't ask somebody else's possessions. That's the 3 words in Mushulay. But in any case, who is it also to? Also to, it's also to the one that did it, and also to everyone he did it to. The two in the Ramah ed, v'asurim lamach ragam ken liyisrael acher. Shalei yanu mimasha bitler. And you can't sell it to somebody else that he should have hana from the fact that you were mavatla. We'll come back to this phrase in a second. Actually, maybe we'll do the phrase now. Do it right now. The Shach adds on over here. What does it mean you had Hana? Let's say, in this case over there, let's say there was 60 ounces of soup, and it cost $1 an ounce, cost $60. Just making it come back, make a shkolim probably makes more sense. But in any case, they'll make it $60, cost $60. Canadian dollars, not worth so much anyway. Okay, $60. Then the person threw in another piece of chicken. It's a bottle of bashishim. Bottle of bashishim. So he's got now 61 ounces. He's going to sell it to somebody else. Just to make the numbers come out easy, it's $1 an ounce. And there's inflation, but $1 an ounce. It's going to cost $61. Cost $61. What is it called having Hana? It's $61 Hana he's getting from the Isser. It's $1 Hana he's getting from the Isser. All he's getting is $1 of extra Hana. The $60, he could have gotten that anyway without being Mavatal. You give him the knas that he shouldn't get any benefit from having transgressed this prohibition. We pass against rabbinic. Okay, so he did. Okay, so he transgressed and he did it. They give him a knas. How much you give him a knas already? You're going to give him a knas for all 61? No. Shach says you penalize him for the hana that he got beser. If it's the same price, he's not gaining anything from it. So then finished. He's not gaining anything more by the iser. Okay, and the mechaber finished with a shar kol adam mutter. For anybody else, it's mutter. So we'll finish this Ramah and we're going to take a break. Now that Ramah goes into this whole inyan of chatichanas and avela, when does this whole din apply that you add it on later, it's going to be all right? B'diavad, if it was done b'shegeg. When you didn't have a problem of chatichanas and avela. Okay, when's that? Either it's a case of yavish b'yavish, there's no nas and avela. Or you feel lach balach. And even lach balach, laman da amar, according to the opinion that says she'ein emri b'chtichanas and level kadel semen tzadik beis. Like we said over there, even lach balach, there are opinions that say that it's okay, and we pass him like that. Perhaps said maruba, it's also okay. But if you have a piece of heter and it absorbed an iser, the second case that you're going to add more heter to mimavatal, it's not going to help. Because we say and it's too late. It's too late. Now, this last piece over here, I think we're going to leave for after the break. Now, what I would like to do, I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so let's get to the rest of the dinner. Okay, so we were holding in this Ramah on Sifhei. So this highlighted piece of Ramah is coming from a little bit of a different direction. So let me just take it off over here, not to be distracted. We differentiated so far of the din b'diavad if it were shegeg amesit. So if it was on purpose, so it's also even b'diavad. If it was b'shegeg, accidental, unknowing, unintentional, however you want to translate shegeg, so then we say it's b'diavad, that it's mutter. There's another shita that says that's not the difference. And if this, talking about memory, if this stimulates some memory cells way back over there from Basa B'chalav, that was mentioned, mamish derech hagos. So you don't remember it, you don't remember even hearing it, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And the Ramah now quotes a shita that it says not the difference shegeg ameis. That's not the difference. The difference whether it was Neda Taruvos or Le Neda Taruvos. Remember you had a story with a calf, and you put the spoon in once and you took it out, and you put it in a second time. We talk about the you knew in between the two times, you didn't know in between the two times. Over here, we differentiate over here. The Ramah now quotes a deya that says the yediyah, whether you knew about the first Taruvos or not, that's really the determining factor. So let's look and see inside. Yeshayim says the Ramah, Just the context over here. We said b'shegig mutter b'meisir aser, who it's aser to, and then the Ramah said you have to always worry about chtichnas and nevela. If it was chtichnas and nevela, adding het is not going to help. And then the Ramah takes a whole different kav over here. V'yeshemrim, there's a whole different interpretation of this whole thing of nas and nevela. Dafilu b'makom delay amrin chtichnas and nevela. That even if there's no nas and nevela, it was yavish v'yavish, lach balach, at the middle, whatever the case, according to the Machaber, whatever the case is, there's a whole different sheet over here. Leimahani had to lavatel, ele im nitesef kedem sheneda tarus. The only time the heter is going to be able to be mavatel is if you add it before you knew about the tarus. In other words, let's say you had 30 ounces of chicken soup. Okay, and then some nevela fell in. Now we got 31 ounces. Okay, and then we said, according to the deis, it's not nas and nevela, called it a machaber, let's say. So then you add another 30, so now we can be mabatel b'shishin. If it was this, the rabban. Okay, that's what the machaber held in the sifov. Okay, so we differentiate between before and after. When is this going to help? Only sholei neda taruvos. Once you know that an ounce of tray fell into your 30 ounces, this is fafalm. You can't join the second 30 ounces to the first 30 ounces. Once you know about it, it makes a stop. Avalim neida taruvos kedem. But if you knew about this mixture, you knew that the tray fell in before you added the other heter, it's not going to help afterwards. So that has nothing to do with nas and avela. You can't anyway be mitzdarif the later heter to the earlier heter according to this day. We don't pass them like this day. Okay, but it ends up being a shtickle relevant in some other cases. But that this should be the difference, not shaking and masid, whether neda lay neda is a different shita. So then to be mitzdarif the later one to the earlier one is not going to help. So if it's mazy, anyway, it doesn't work. Okay, not midarais, not midarban. If it's shegeg, so then it's going to be kosher as long as it's bottled. Here he's going to saying there's a difference over here the word lenedel. So therefore, it's the requirement of the Rav who's going to be Mavatal the Yisr over here. He's not being Mavatal Yisr, somebody else Mavatal Yisr. He's going to paskin that the Yisr is bottle. Say, Lach kerin mitesva het lach sheneda. Remember, we spoke about this before. Does he have to make an investigation or not? So over there, we were making the investigation was an as and navel or not. So according to this, he says you have to make a chakira whether they knew about the taruvos before the second part was answered. Yeah, play nog came, and the minig is not like that. That we don't make such a chakira, and like we said before in the previous slide, that we don't worry about any reis over here. But this is a day of which the Ramah brings down. So the Shach says, La halacha, we do not paskin like this. We don't know paskin like this. Yeshem Ramah. Allah and Hefshim Neida Israel Neida. Whether you knew about it, you didn't know about that, that's not the difference. So if it's a case where you don't have to worry about nas and avela, like the cases that are brought, again yavish b'yavish, then it's mutter. Mutter afilu neidish nafal is, even if you knew about it, then it's going to be mutter. Again, if it's shagig, mikrish and shayach chanan, and if it was something which was nas and avela, like again lach b'yavish, some liquid fell into a salad, vice versa, nasa chanan, then it's nasa nevela. And I feel like Hashalina does, even if you didn't know, adding something on later on is not going to help you because it's chetich nasa nevela. So basically, we pass in the way the Ramah said previously, the basic principle, and this thing of Lolinada Taruvos is not la lacha. Now here comes a slide which is very, very negaya to halacha. Efanim shemutal levatul iser. And basically, there's another way of being mevatul iser lechatchil. So here's one. Sometimes you find insect parts inside the honey. Okay, the honey is hanging around bees, right? So you have these insect parts in it, and you want to make it pure honey. So how do you purify the honey to get these insect? These insect parts are not kosher. Insects are not kosher. just for your, we're gonna use it in another couple of minutes, but we're gonna be learning soon about Beria Leibotel. If you have a Beria, which is an entire creature, like why are ants or any sort of bugs, thrips, whatever they are, aphids, why they're not botel b'shishim? You have a whole big head of lettuce. Why do we go crazy checking the lettuce, checking the cabbage? Over there, it's less than shishim. Why is it not botel b'shishim? The answer is because the Beria Leibotel. We didn't learn it yet, but a Beria. If something was a complete creature, you have these ants over here. So that's a whole ant. So then it's not botel b'chlal. But even if it's pieces, so it's the pieces are botel b'shishim. It's only if it's a whole bug. You have a bug, you hacked it up a foot, you knocked off it's not a berry anymore, then it's botel b'shishim. You might not want to eat it, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about kosher not to eat. To ever take a look at defect action levels. If you remind me sometime when we have some extra time after Shiur, if that ever happens, I'll tell you about the defect action levels. There's all sorts of interesting things that we are all eating that if you knew about it, it'd be very easy to go on a diet. But bekitzer. Over here, what's the problem? Even here, it's pictures of whole bugs. You got a problem with berry, you got to get them out. So what do they do? Even if it's pieces, you want to get it out. There's bees' legs over there, wings, who knows what's over there. You want to get it out. What do? You melt it. Okay, you heat it up so it gets liquefied. Okay, and then you put it through a strainer, you pour it through a strainer, and all the insect parts come out. What's the problem? The problem is that when you heat it up, the taste, the tam of the sheretz goes into the honey. Now, whether that's nice and tam lefgam or not, the Torah answered it. Okay, so there's a whole discussion later on what happens with the evidence in such a case. But here we're talking about memvatelis lachatchila. Here you're heating up these insects, is becoming yatzaledis by, and the taste of the insect is going to the honey. It's botel b'shishim, but is this mevatelis lachatchila or not? Why shouldn't this be a problem of mevatelis lachatchila? You're nullifying the tam of the insect in the honey. So this is a sim pei dalit. It says on the upper left, so like this, but this is in Hilchos Teiloim, sim pei dalit earlier. So dvash and nafla bein nemolim. If you have honey and the ants fell inside, we have it today. The ants didn't fall inside. It's like a natural part of the production. Heat it up until it becomes liquid, until it pours. And then you can filter it out. Put it through a strainer. What's happened to the mevatelis l'chatchila? Because of atas. In mevatel iser biyodayim, then it's a problem. But your kavanah was not to be mevatel. Why are you cooking this up? Because you want to have the taste of bees' wings in your honey? Nobody wants that. You have no kavanah to do that. So this is another inyan of mevatel iser l'chatchila. Even if you're mevatel the iser, but it's not your kavanah to be mevatel the iser. So we see from this case of the honey that this is a big tzad heter. Whether this is enough by itself or not is a very big debate. Yeah. There's no other way to get it out. If there's another way to get it out, then it's a problem of mevatel l'chatchila. Let's say the only way to get it out is through a tircha yasayda. You're going to pick out you can get out, you can take out the legs and you're going to go through every piece of honey and you're going to take out every leg of a bug. You theoretically can do it, but it's a tircha yasayda. So this way, you're not required to go through a tircha yasayda. And this is a way of doing it. And not such a case, we're not worried about mevatelis l'chatchila. Now, there's many other factors. Wait till we finish this whole slide, and then I'll take some questions, because we have many cases like this. The Alter Rebbe says in Hilchos Pesach that you have wheat, and normally you grind the wheat into flour. Now, in the wheat, if it's there's mutzumoches, that some of it got wet and they started sprouting, that's chametz gomer. Then sometimes you have that it became a little moist. Maybe there's a crack. You're not sure. Is it chametz? Is it not chametz? It's a suffix. And we also don't know how many are in there. Okay, so chametz on Pesach is mashu. Here you're going to be baking the matzahs before Pesach, so it's still a heter, but you still need bittul b'shishim. So as long as you're sure there's no shishim, so the Alter Rebbe says that you're allowed to grind up the whole thing. Why? Your kavanah is not to be mevatel chametz. You'd be much happier if the chametz was not there. Your kavanah is to make flour. So you have no kavanah to be mevatel iser. Automatically there's going to be a bittul iser. but that's derech me'il. That's not your kavana. Your kavana, you make flour. What do you do with wheat? Nobody eats wheat. I mean, people do eat wheat, but not for the Pesach. You make matzahs. So you're turning the wheat into flour. That's all discussion in the Mishnayos and in Lagabe Truma. Okay, so the wheat, it's emed lakach. This is what you do with wheat. You make it into flour. So Alter Rebbe says mutter, as long as you show that the shishim. Ad kedekach, you can even pull out the mutzumachas to make sure it's less than shishim, and then you don't have to get every last one out. You can go and grind up the rest. Now, is this good enough? So this idea of ein kavanasa lavatel is good, but it's very questionable whether this is good enough on its own. Because even over there, the Alter Rebbe Mitzdarif over there, it's a suffix iser. It's not that it's a vada iser. If it's mamish mitzumachas, is one thing. Here it's a suffix. We don't have the bikiyas or whatever the case is. We don't know how many of them became chametz, how many not became chametz. Okay, so that's one case. So here's chitim utaloyim butal latachnon. Over here, over there is talking about the chametz. Over here is talking about that the wheat had bugs in it. So you're going to grind up the wheat, you're going to grind up the bugs too. The bugs are less than the shishim, but the beria, it's a beria, it's a whole bug. Once you grind it up, so then it's no longer a whole bug. Once it's no longer a whole bug, it's batal b'shishim. So by the way, you just noticed these are two other tziyurim, two other descriptions of a person being mavatal l'chatchila. One is through the cooking that you're mavatal the tam, and here you're taking a beria and you're being mavatal it. So this you're not allowed to do on purpose. The only reason you're allowed over here is because this is what you do with chitim. You make flour out of it. There happen to be some bugs in it, but you still have to filter out the pieces. You look and you try to get out the bugs, and the rest of it is mutter. So you see over here, Tav Hay is a Trumas Hadesh. So this Trumas Hadeshin is very, very important. There are people that want to eat strawberries and raspberries. They want to make smoothies. They want to do all of these things. They have kale from the Shem Hashem Chokim. They want to have kale. Chesed, it's the generation of kale. Anyway, they want to have all of these things. These things are full of malit tailoim. It means they're more than shishim. So Rabbi says there could be more than shishim also. There was an African tribe. I digress, I have enough time. There was an African tribe that was vegan. And these people were gesunte chevre. And they were trying to figure out how these people so healthy, they don't have any protein. So they sent down a bunch of professors that went down and they went and they said maybe they have different guava over there, whatever kind of fruit they had. They checked the fruit, they checked the vegetables. Turned out it was the same fruit, it was the same vegetables, everything was the same. And they found out where they were getting their protein from. There were so many bugs. That's where they were getting their protein from, the galep from them. Here in Africa, so I heard once, I got a call once from a bacher who was making a seder over there. He made a bunch of eggplants. And he made for the seder. There's not too much he could get over there. There's a lot of fruits and vegetables he tried to get over there. It was full of worms. There was an Israeli over there. He said, for sure, all the eggplant over there is full of worms. In any case. So if it's a barrier, it's not bottle. Once you chop it up, then it's bottle of shishim. So it's less than shishim. Over there in Africa, probably there's more than shishim also, but if it's less than shishim, then it's okay. The shaila is this called mevatel l'chatchila? The answer is yes. So if your kavanah is to be mevatel the bug, and I'll tell you even more. If you know that the bug is there, it's a problem. So that the top phase is Trumas Hadeshin. So this Trumas Hadeshin, all of the poskim that write about this, analyze this Trumas Hadeshin. So let me tell you what it says in the Trumas Hadeshin. He's going to bring down some of it over here, I believe, in the slide. The case of the Trumas Hadeshin was like this. There were bugs in the wheat. So what they would do, they pour in the bugs into the grinder from the top, and they pour it into some receptacle over there, and then they would start the grinding. So the Trumas Hadeshin says it's mutter. Why is it mutter, says the Trumas Hadeshin? There are a few factors. So one factor is, like we said, is that the income and also levatel. He'd much rather the bugs are not there. He doesn't want the bugs. He just wants flour. The bugs are there. A second factor, he says, is that B'chan's a suffix where there are any bugs. Why? Because the sound of the grinder chases them away. there's an escape place. When you pour in the wheat from the top, before the wheat goes to the grinder, the way that keli, the way that type of grinder worked, there was a place for the bugs to escape. So the bugs get poured in over there, together with the wheat, and they hear all of this rash, they hear all of this racket, and the bugs run for their lives. So that's a second factor over here. Then comes Russell battle number one. Number two, B'chal it's a suffix whether there are any bugs left because of the noise. They all ran away. And it's two things. It's the noise plus an escape route. Okay, second factor. A third thing the Trumas Hadeshin writes over there is that you took out as many bugs as you could. Okay, you looked through and you took out bugs, so you did something in order to, it's a whole discussion of Poskim. What does that help if you're not sure you got everything out? But I'll just take one of the explanations, is that you're showing that you don't have any kavanah to eat it because you're trying to take it out, and you did your best to take it out. Now, just by the way, the Trumas Hadeshin, so it's known Hadeshin is the number of tshuvas in the Sefer. It's known that Trumas Hadeshin wrote the Shilas. It's a Sefer Shilas and Tshuvas. But he wrote the Shilas. It wasn't normally Shilas and Tshuvas. A person asked the Pesach Shaila, and he describes what happened, and he takes apart all the different factors. He put in every factor he wanted because he himself wrote the Shilas. So, although in other cases it's easier to say this is Lavdafka and that's Lavdafka, maybe it just happened to be the Shaila who says that that's a determining factor, but Trumas Hadeshin is an exception to the rule. It's less like that because he wrote everything the way he wanted it, so it's more precise. So if you want to apply this, okay, let's just go further on the slide and we'll talk about it. The Shach writes, so if it's a suffix isser, so then it's mevatel isser lachatchila. If you're not sure there's an isser there or not, there's no prohibition to be mevatel. Maybe there's an isser there. So then you're allowed to grind up and mash up all the blend, whatever it is, all this mixture. So again, there's a combination of factors over there. There's enkonos labatul, and it's a suffix, and the suffix in the case of the Trumas Hadeshin, at least, was first of all he was mevarer. He did the best he could to get out the bugs, and then we had this escape route that all the bugs could run. So now you have over here some strawberries on the right over here, so strawberries. And you have some parsley over here, whatever it is. And these small leafy vegetables are mamish mole tailoim. Strawberries, raspberries are even worse. And blackberries are also almost virtually impossible to get the insect free. Strawberries is another discussion. We're not learning Hilchos Tailoim now. It's a whole discussion about it. But definitely there are insects there. That we know. Now, how much is the miyat matzah, miyat sheina matzah? That's in Hilchos Tailoim. We're not talking about that now. The shaila is now, let's say a person wants to have has raspberries. Somebody gave him raspberries. The person serves a bowl of raspberries, and you have somebody who knows a little bit about halacha, a little about kashrus over there, says, excuse me, these raspberries, you're not allowed to eat. They're full of bugs. You open up the inside of the raspberries, you see the white bugs inside. It's very, very rogel to have it. So I have all these raspberries. I bought it. I paid so much money for. What am I going to do? You know what? I'll grind them up and I'll be mevatel them. The Rishon, is that allowed? Is that not allowed? Is that kavanah levatel, or is the kavanah to make a smoothie? You have a fruit stand that they're making smoothies. You have a place and they're making smoothies. That's what they do. They make smoothies. They have a whole pile of fruit and they don't do anything else to make smoothie. Everything gets blended till it's liquid. Okay, oisberia, things got mashed up. So there, the kavanah is not, I don't have any other way to eat the raspberry or the strawberry, whatever it is, unless I make a smoothie. So I'm not a smoothie. Over there, the whole kavanah is taken to make a smoothie. That's al derech making the flour. So again, this is something, how do you have, lamashal, broccoli kugel, spinach kugel, these sort of things. So today you have spinach and broccoli, they're growing with hashgacha, that's insect-free. But the old days, broccoli is mamish under very, very special conditions, and even those places sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But al derech harogel, all broccoli, whether it's frozen or fresh, is moli teiloim. A lot of teiloim. How did they used to make broccoli? So it's a famous discussion. You have Meshavai Sefer. There's a whole discussion about this. That let's take spinach. Spinach also has a lot of teloy. So what do they do? So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was matir like this, based on this Tumas Hadesh. He says, first of all, clean the spinach the best you can. Okay. You're not sure you got out all the bugs. Very good chance. Probably you didn't get out all the bugs. And in order to eat it like that, that's not sufficient. You got to get all the bugs out. Okay. But at least you're washing, if you wash it thoroughly and you do it the proper way with soap, whatever it is, you brought it down to the level, at least it's Safek Yisr. Once you're in the realm of a Safek Yisr, so you have the Shach over here that says that since it's only a Safek Yisr, there's no problem being Mavatalit. So even if you don't have 100% good cleaning method, so this is a method that all of these things you can eat. There are different svaras that are brought. The mushroom, if you have something, I forget which sefer, I saw an interesting svara in a sefer. I'm not saying the pasuk like this, but it's a svara that if there's no way to properly clean this food in order that it should be mutter, to make sure broccoli is insect free if it was infested, it's really not shaykh. You're going to take all of these little, and they don't have brains too much, but they're created in such a way that for survival they go straight for the most nutritious part of the plant. So the darker the green, the more nutritious it is, and that's the place they go. So right underneath the flower that's on the top, so then that's all the bugs are inside over there. So you're gonna have to take all, like, each of these things, if it's magnified, each like a forest. Each one of those little pintalach is like another tree. You're gonna take apart all of those. So it can take you the whole day to eat a piece of broccoli. So not shaykh such a thing. So if it be such a thing that if you enforce this din, then nobody will be able to eat it at all. So the truth is not like that, because if you cut off those flowerets and you're left just with the solid pieces, so those you can clean, then you can clean the bugs. It's not a big deal. So it's not like you're assering it all together. But let's say raspberries or something like this, to completely asser the min, because it's lokui, so then we use certain hatatim. So therefore, as long as you clean it, you make it in the realm of a Safek Yisr, so that's one of the hatatim that are used. So over here, the MK, the Mashal, has a policy that certain things that we do have a good chance of being able to clean. This, you see on the bottom over here, this is like a wide leaf parsley, if I'm not cilantro, that you have the parsley with the little tiny leaves, and you have the wider leaves like this. And this, now you have the thrip cloth method, different ways of checking for teloim, and there are ways to make sure that it's pretty sure that it's insect-free mamish. So if you did that, so maybe it's not good enough that you can eat it like that, but to blend it, and that's something that you don't have a problem of vatalis lachatchila. Anyway, very relevant in a lot of cases. Any questions? Somebody wanted to ask before.
You said you're putting us on a diet. You're canceling all the healthy food.
All the non-healthy food has even more bugs in it.
The dvash, it doesn't really say bishul there. It says it just heat up and add until it gets to a point that it's melted, that it's more.
Yeah, but it's a ledespay. The poskim is speaking about it. That it's already yatsa ledespay. It doesn't have
with
to
boil. The flour, if you sift it afterwards, any insects would come out. No, even if they're.
No, the problem with flour, it's also the whole sifting of flour is you have milbin. Milbin are very, very tiny bugs. I mean, Hilchos Teilon.
That was my other question.
I don't think it's for now. But when you have milbin and flour, and you put it out you spread out the flour on a black plate or a black cloth or something like that. The only way to tell the difference between the elam achai and the elam atzameach, what's the insect and what's the flour, is the flour doesn't crawl around.
Wow.
How big is a tiny fleck of flour? How big is that?
It's tiny. That was my last question.
But it's visible without a microscope. You can see flour without a microscope. If it's microscopic, then it's something else, but it's clearly visible. Once the thing starts walking, you can tell. There is
Right.
such a sheet there. Rashi
So,
says
so
over
if
there,
you can see with the naked eye,
sheretz is-
it's considered a burial.
Sheretz is loshen sharotz. So that's the only way
Under
you
a
can tell
microscope, there are things that move. They're just we
that
just
doesn't
don't see it.
matter. That's under a microscope. So then you would, if you ask for things that you can see under a microscope, you wouldn't be able to breathe either. That's for sure not healthy. It's pekuch nefesh to breathe. You know, there's all sorts of things, things flying around in the air, things which are microscopic metzias. Not. I mean, it's a whole discussion. Elchas Teilayim. Let's say you can see it, but you can't tell whether it's a bug or a piece of dirt without magnification. So it's another machlekes haposkim. Anyway, we're not learning that now. Very important dinim, but we're not learning it now. Right now, we're learning about the
By the way,
listen.
just wondering, by after Sukkot we had I think where the whole thing with the Torah Kinestera, yeah, I don't know why it was in my mind right now. Anyway, one of the people there gave a whole shiur with all these concepts about orange juice. Did you ever deal with that, the whole thing?
Yes, but it's not for now.
It's mamish,
Okay.
all this whole thing. Like
Where are
mentioned almost
you?
all this stuff.
Where are you?
In Baltimore.
Yeah, okay, good. I know all about it. Yeah. Okay, weiter gefahren. Yeah, yes, all the chavret are okay about it. Anyway, very, very fascinating topic, but not for now. We have to finish Siv Zion. Okay, Siv Zion. So we made a siyum on Hey Vav, a very, very crucial simanim. You see, mamish packed with very applicable concepts. But now we're going to get to Siv Zion. Siv Zion is one concept, which is the two words to remember it is Kli Shefa. Okay. So Kli Shefa means there's a lot. So what happened over here, you see this little red spot over here. It looks like the pot has a boo-boo. Okay. So what happened over here? There was a iser. It was bailei. It absorbed the taste of some iser, but only a little bit of iser. Let's say, sometimes somebody's frying something and some oil splatters. You have a drop that goes on it. So let's say you have a milchika pot. Okay, so a little tiny drop went on there, or parva pot and some flesh went on there, or it's a iser, a little pintle, a little point on iser. Is it ever shaykh? This thing is going to answer something. It's not shaykh. Let's say over here in the picture, this little pintle is not so little. It's on the bottom. Let's say it would be higher up, and it's even smaller. Okay, so the only time you're going to end up having food coming in contact with this thing is that you fill it up with a very significant amount of water or food or something like that. And even down over here, depending on how big it is, it's not shaykh that it's always going to be batal b'shish. So now you have an isser over here in the wall of the keli. If you use this keli, let's say it's a kli cheres, you can't kasher it. So now what do you do? Do you have to not use it? Let's say it's a big keli, you can't use it. Sometimes you have industrial kelim, you can't kasher. Different sorts of cases are very difficult to kasher. You have a chainik, you have a hot water urn, a big metal hot water urn, and every to get off, and somebody spilled a little pintle of cholent fell on there when it was hot. It's a klirishin. It's a hot mecham, a hot percolator. But it's such a tiny amount. Let's say it's on the top of the percolator. The only time we're going to have to worry about that water becoming fleshik is when you fill up the percolator. When you fill up the percolator, it's not only batal b'shishim, it's batal achveis and 1,000. Who knows how much? A little tiny bit fell on there. So that is called kli shetef. Kli shetef, excuse me, kli shefa is the way the terminology used over here. That it's b'shefa, that the large amount of heter is coming through over there. What's the shaila? The shaila, maybe it's mevatalis lachatchila. Let's say it would be treif that fell onto the pot. So how are we allowing you to cook kosher in this pot? Because it's always going to be less than shishim. Why is that not mevatalis lachatchila? The time of the treif is going to come into the food. So the answer is, first of all, like the answer to all halacha questions, it depends. If it's in a place and it's such a keli that it's shaykh to use this keli in such a way that it would not be batal b'shishim, then you're talking not allowed to use it. But if the nature of the keli and the proportion of iser and the proportion of heter, like in the example I gave you in this pot, if it's further up, so there's never going to be an absorption into the food unless you fill it up with a lot of liquid. So then, the chachamim were not gezer. Since it's impossible, it's impossible to ever become aser. So it's associating the in mevatel isla chatchila that if you allow somebody to be mevatel isla chatchila, eventually they're going to come to eat the yasser itself. Over here, you're never going to come to eat the yasser itself. So what do you have to be gezer for? That's the principle over here. The emes is it's more complicated than that, and it's negayah to halacha. So I have to bring down the complication too. And that is, it speaks about this inyan about wine that was in a keli, and when you use water in that keli, there'll be a small amount of tam yayin that's going to come into the water, but it's always going to be butter. Well, the shiurim with yayin are totally different. Whole different discussion. We're not learning the laws of yayin now, but whatever the case is, the principle is that there's such a small amount of the taste of wine in this keli that it's impossible that the water should ever become aser. Okay? So then it's mutter. The shaila is wine. So the Rashba says, like I just explained to you, what I explained to you now is the explanation of the Rashba on that Gemara in Aveda Zara. But the Rashba says it's impossible it should ever become aser. So in such a case, there's no prohibition of mevatel isla chatchila, because it could never be possible. The whole thing not shaykh. So why should be gaze in such a case? That's the explanation of the Rashba. But the other Rishonim, you have the Ra, the Bedek Abayis on the Rashba. And he says, no, it's different. He says, yayin with mayim is nice and tam lefgam. The wine, the taste of the wine gets ruined from the water. So it's not that it couldn't become iser because of the amount. It's never become iser because nice and tam lefgam. So you're never going to have an iser there. So when you take that and you import it into this case over here, so if it's according to the Rashba, so our case of this little tiny bli of the case that I was explaining to you until I brought in this Gemara about the yayin, is that it's such a small amount. There's no problem of mevatel isla chatchila, because such a small amount it's always going to be bottled. But according to the explanation, it only works if the two things have a relationship with neis and tam lefgam. If it's not neis and tam lefgam, so then you're stuck. So we're going to see now what the Shach and Taz do with this. But first, let's learn the Machar. Im nivle is, this is Sivzai. Im nivle iser muat. L'teich libaser, if you have a prohibition that was absorbed in the walls of a fleshka keli, for example. So im dar kishal eisa keli. Lishtamish be b'shefa heter, if the manner, the regular usage of that keli is to use it b'shefa with a large amount of heter, such a case, mutal ishtamish bei lachatchila. That's what the Rashba says. You're allowed to use this keli even lachatchila. Kiven she'isr muat, since the prohibited taste is so small, v'yev she'lav l'idei nesinas tam, and it's impossible it should ever come to give taste into the heter. Lefichach isr mashuhu shenivla bekedera. And therefore, an isra mashu, if it's only a tiny amount of prohibited taste that got absorbed into the pot, or some other bottles, you're allowed to use it even even if it's a ben yeme. You don't have to wait till it's not a ben yeme, till it's nice and tam lefgam. After 24 hours, nice and tam lefgam, you don't. The Rashba doesn't need it to be nice and tam. The other opinion said it had to be nice and tam lefgam. Okay, but here he's allowing it even if it's a ben yemel. It's impossible that it should ever be nice and tam. But if it's a keli, which is a smaller keli, or it's lower down in the keli, whatever the case is, if it got absorbed into a keli, that the normal usage is to use it sometimes, b'davar muat, with a small amount. Kakairo kiyetzeba, have a bowl, a plate, smaller keli. Then it's not. We don't have this heter. Then even if you're going to use a lot, it's still prohibited. Why? It's going to be bottle b'shishim. Yeah, but the keli, if the keli is sometimes going to be bottle, sometimes not going to be bottle, so then the chacham didn't allow it. You don't allow even to use it with a large amount that it's going to be bottle. So gezerah, maybe you're going to use it for a small amount that it's not going to be bottle. Okay, it's getting late. Let me go weiter. So the Shulchan Aruch im Niblis and more should talmid yeshishim kenegdei mutlish tamish b'sir. So if you have a small, this is just chazering over bekitzin, what we just learned. If a small amount of prohibition got absorbed into the pot and is always 60 times more, it's always bottles, and you're allowed to use the pot. But the Shach and Taz say it's not enough. They want not only it should be like the Mechaber says, which was the Rashba, they want also what the Ra says. They want it to be nice and tam lefkam. That's a shach. That you shouldn't use it even if it's always going to be bottle. But only if it's nice and tam lefkam. So practically speaking, let's say you should have, okay, it's generally it's the same. Let's say you have some tam basar that got absorbed in a mecham, in a percolator, a part of a percolator. So the kasha, one of these things, is a job and a half. So the shaila is, are you allowed to use it? Do we say it's a kli shefa? Let's say it was a drop of flesh dripped on the top of this, on the upper part of the wall of this percolator. Okay, so what's the din? So b'pashtas, it has the din of kli shefa, or b'shefa, and it's always going to have bittul b'shishim. Yeah, but that's according to Rashba. According to the Roy and the Shach and Taz, want that also. Machmer like both opinions, and it has to be nice and tam l'kam too. So what's the eitzah? The eitzah is let it sit for 24 hours, especially if it's only used for Shabbos. It's going to sit more than 24 hours. Clean it, let it sit for more than 24 hours. Then it's going to be nice and tam l'kam. And it's a kli shefa, and under such conditions, it would be mutter.
The fact that you want to use it for hot water and the taste of meat, isn't that there's a ton of gum?
The tam of tam basar into water is not called nice and tam l'kam, it's called soup. Okay, Chaver, I forgot, we didn't do chayz v'nir yet, and it's called the end of the shiur. Very, very important. Okay, so this Ramah, we skipped over. This is from Siv Vav. I don't know why it had Siv Zion in the PowerPoint before Siv Vav. That's why it didn't occur to me that we skipped it. Is it Shani's battle? I gave you this din outside at the beginning of the shiur. Is it Shani's battle? If the Issa was bottled because they were shishim. Okay, so here, piece of nevela fell in, is bottled by shishim. What do we have now? We have a kosher pot. Let's say it was 1 ounce. There was 60 ounces of kosher. Now we have 61 ounces of kosher. Yeah. And now another piece of the same thing falls in now. So now, what's the shot? What happens now? We have to be mavatal this 1 ounce of treif. How much can we use? Okay. The fact is, the thing that would apply even if it wasn't 60. Let's say it was 80. Okay, it was 80. Then the first piece fell in, it's 81. Okay, now the second piece fell in. Okay, so you have enough to be mavatal b'shishim. But the problem is they both have the same taste. If it's the same thing as the first one, so now, do we judge it that there's 1 ounce that fell into the pot? Or do we say that the whole thing comes up? Are you a bottle? Okay, when you bottle, you always need a veda. You bottle, you daven b'aveda, and now you bottle, okay? And the next day, you eat breakfast, and then you're back to step 1. Yeah, chayz v'nir. That it wakes up again. So that's why, yes, Shishnis battle, Kagain Choy Shishim Kenegde, you had 60 times more of Heter, and the same thing that fell in the first time fell in the second time, more of it fell in. Then it wakes up, the first piece that fell in, even though it was bottle, okay, so now it is aroused and woken up by the other piece of Isser. And now we have 2 pieces of Isser, and you don't have to need Shishim against both of them together. That is the din of Chazer v'Neir. And that applies only if it has the same taste. Remember, we said at the beginning of the Shiur that if it was an ounce of Chaylev and then an ounce of Chazer, so then they're not mitzdaref with each other, they have two different tastes. But over here, if that's what he says, first line of the Ramav, and he tastes it by Yachakach Mina Isser Harishon. This applies only if the same thing fell on the first as the first time. So then we have this problem. The two of them get together. And now there are different days that differentiate when there's this chumrah or chayzer v'neir apply. Does it apply in all cases or not? So there's three different shittas, three different potential heterim that one could say that the din of chayzer v'neir doesn't apply. What the Ramah now does is he throws out all three of them. So it doesn't make any difference. This first heter I don't accept, the second heter I don't accept, and the third heter I don't accept either. So all of these cases we're going to have chayzer v'neir. What are the three cases? Leishna doesn't make any difference. Min b'minei, leishna min b'sheina minei. You know, is it min b'minei? Here we have these the treifa chicken with the kosher chicken. Min b'minei, or it's min b'sheina minei. You might want to say though that it's easier min b'minei, that it's bottle. That it's a bottle berev midiraisa. It doesn't make any difference. Second shita, second potential at the leishna yavish, leishna lach. We might have more of a reason to be makel if it's a davar yavish, okay? But it doesn't make any difference. We're machmer yavish, davar lach, whether it's dry, whether it's wet. And the third possible little heter, so this we learned previously from the Ramah. Leishna neida b'ntayim, or lei neida b'ntayim. Doesn't make a difference if you knew of the Taruvos in between, or you didn't know of the Taruvos in between. All of these cases comes along the Ramah and says we're not makel in any of these three heterim. There are shittas that say it's mutter. We don't hold like that. Can't it? Along comes the shach, and the shach says, okay, fine, we don't accept any of these three heterim. But if you have all three of them together, the shach wants to be makel b'hefzeh meruba. B'hefzeh meruba nitin lahakel b'shleisha tzirufim. If you have all three of them together, if you had all the three best case scenarios, the first of all is yeah. Secondly, that it was yavish b'yavish, and third of all, the second one fell in after you already knew about the first. You have all three of these together, so then comes the shach and says it's okay. However, la halacha, the achareinim, the reiv say no. It's like the Ramah, always going to be chayzer v'neir. And it's always going to be a problem. Meshita Alter Rebbe is a whole discussion, but it's not for now. So we're running out of time. We'll just do the very last piece over here. This was another leftover. Remember at the beginning of the shir that this was the other klolim. So I mentioned then that there was one klal, which was the inyan of chayzer v'neir, which really deserved a more lengthy treatment than I just gave it. But that's the din of chayzer v'neir, which is very, very relevant in many cases, and it's a klal galul. And this is another thing which comes over quite frequently. This thing in bittul heter v'heter. Two things with a mutter. Is there any of bittul when you have two things which are mutter? What's the case? The Ramah says this is the same. This is the end of the Ramah Sivov. Kazayis cholov shenafel lamayim v'nispatel b'shish. So you have a kazayas of milk, same thing with less than a kazayas. Some milk fell into the water, and it's bottle b'shish. Now this water is still parv. It's got some milk inside, but the milk is bottle b'shish. Let's say, for argument's sake, there was 60 ounces of water, and then you put in 1 ounce of milk. It's bottle b'shish. You have 61 ounces of parv water. Then this water falls into a pot of flesh. Now, let's say it's a pot of flesh, there's 30 ounces of flesh. Okay, so wait a second. We got 60 ounces of water. Okay, we have 30 ounces of let's say you got 59 ounces of flesh. Okay, but you got 1 ounce of milk. So if we ignore the water and you take the milk against the meat, there's no bittul b'shish. So what's the story? So then it's mutter. So you have some milk fell into the water. It was batal b'shishim. And then it fell into the dereshel basar. Mutter. Even if you don't have shishim in the meat against the milk, sharin is batal b'mayim. The milk is like it's not there anymore. It became batal already in the water. It became kol kayetz b'zeh. Here he has, instead of the milk falling into the meat just fell into the milk. Okay, so in such a case, you don't have shishim in the meat against that milk. Okay, but the meat fell into water, so it already became batal beforehand. Okay, so I think I mentioned before, you always have to be careful when you learn Shulchan Aruch. Is it lashon shel lechatchila or lashon shel b'diavad? If it tells you a story that something happened, so that's a lashon shel b'diavad. But telling you, moto la'arev, that's lechatchila. But if it said if it happened, that's a lashon shel b'diavad. So what's over here? Kazayas cholav shenofel lamayim. Telling you a story, it's a lashon shel b'diavad. So the shaila is, are you allowed to do this? And because we have two stages over here. First, the case when the milk fell into the water. That's lashon shel b'diavad, shenofel lamayim, b'nispat b'shishim. What happens afterwards? So with the meat also, it's a lashon shel b'diavad. V'achach nofel min hamayim l'kader shel basar. So all of this looks like it's b'diavad, then it's mutter. Everything looks like it's b'diavad. But la'alacha we say not like that. The first stage is not b'diavad, but once it became batal already, by accident, then l'chatchila you can already put it in the bottle. L'chatchila also la'arev cholav b'mayim im b'kavanasa lavashlas hamayim im basar. So you cannot say, something, I want to get this milk into the meat. How am I going to do it? I'm going to be mevatel the milk and water, and then I'm going to put the water into the meat. That's a problem. That you're not allowed to do the first step in order to having in mind the second step. Also la'arev cholav b'mayim im b'kavanasa lavashlas hamayim im basar. Rak b'diavad. What's the b'diavad here? Kishenofel cholav l'teich hamayim. If the first case happened b'diavad, you didn't put the milk in the water on purpose. The milk fell into the water. So then, what and chatchila, you're allowed to use that water together with meat. The water is mutter. So the mashma from the lashon over here is that the whole thing's only b'diavad. But lahalacha, we say that if the first case happened b'diavad, you can do the second case. Now there are those that say you can do a lachatchila, but the interesting lashon, Alter Rebbe brings this down. You have this whole inyan of bittul heter beheter is very negay nochos Pesach, because chometz before Pesach is heter. So the whole dinim of heter bola, if you remember basar b'cholav, you also had this concept of heter bola, that the basar is by itself is mutter and the cholav by itself is mutter. So we learn out different things over there. The big chiddush Alter Rebbe has b'hilchot basar b'cholav over there comes in nochos Pesach, because we have how do we treat? It's true, there's a machlikas rishenim to whether we treat chametz before Pesach as heter or iser. Certain cases we certainly treat it more leniently, but you treat it completely as heter or not, it's not a discussion. But over there, Alter Rebbe was talking about being mevatel chametz. If you put chametz into food before Pesach, it's called mevatel l'chatchila, but then it's heter. Okay, but so too over here, when you put the milk in the water, it's also heter. There are those that say that it's mutter. Why? There's no bittul l'chatchila over there. What's the problem? You're allowed to put milk in the water. People put milk in water every day. What's the problem? Didn't miss it. You had in mind later on you're going to take this milk and put it into the meat. Okay, but it's already batal b'shishim. It's already the parv. So there are the poskim that say like that. The Alter Rebbe brings this down in Hilchos Pesach, and he talks about the Indian sharp for lashon the kunshas achron. I think the top of my base, I'm mistaken. This thing should be forgotten, wiped out, such a svara. Forget about it. You're going to put the water, you're going to put the milk in the water, having in mind to mix it with meat, sugar. I'm not shy of such a thing. Very sharp lashon over there in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, okay. We actually finished. Screen sharing has stopped. Fine. Okay, gentlemen. So that's it for tonight. Stopping the recording here.